Welcome to the Architect of Sleep channel. Today, we will embark on a quiet journey to the heart of our own planet, to hear her silent stories and touch the mysteries she holds under the cover of oceans, in the thickness of stone, and in the very breath of the wind. We will wander through a world where stones sing, deserts bloom once a century, and where beneath our feet entire worlds exist that we can barely guess at. This is not a geography lesson, but a lullaby woven from the whisper of the earth herself. We will learn that our planet lives, breathes, and remembers, and every grain of sand keeps its own chronicle. This is a journey into the depths, to the most intimate secrets of our shared home. If you enjoy these quiet journeys, I invite you to leave a like, subscribe, or share a thought below. This helps others find their way here, one sleepy soul at a time. And now, just breathe. Allow your eyes to grow heavy and your mind to soften. Let's begin. The earth has its own quiet, intimate perfume, an aroma it breathes out only after a long drought, upon meeting the first, long-awaited drops of rain. This scent, known as petrichor, is not just the aroma of wet dust, but a complex symphony born in the secret laboratories of the soil. During dry periods, plants, striving to retain moisture, release special essential oils that are absorbed by clay-rich rocks and dry earth, as if sealing their summer dreams within it. At the same time, the most ancient soil bacteria, actinomycetes, produce the organic compound geosmin, that very deep, earthy note that we perceive so sharply and vaguely familiar. When the first drop of rain hits a porous surface, it traps tiny air bubbles, which, as they rise and burst, carry this complex cocktail of plant oils and bacterial breath with them, releasing it as an invisible aerosol. Thus, every first rain becomes an act of the planet's highest perfumery art, a fleeting reminder of the hidden life that is always biding its time beneath our feet, ready to awaken at a single touch of water. And sometimes the earth underfoot does not just wait to awaken, but sings its own ancient and lingering songs. In some of the world's deserts, from the Gobi to the Atacama, in the hours when the wind grows stronger, one can hear the phenomenon of singing sands. This is not mysticism, but physics, clothed in the pure poetry of the moment. When a gust of wind or a person's step shifts the upper dried layer of a dune, millions of tiny, almost perfectly spherical grains of quartz sand begin to slide and roll over one another. Their surface is so free of impurities and polished by centuries of friction that their contact creates a faint vibration. This vibration, multiplied by millions, synchronizes and is amplified by the entire gigantic mass of sand, giving rise to a low, humming sound, similar to the singing of a distant choir, the drone of a cello, or the sound of a passing airplane. These sounds can last for several minutes and be heard for kilometers, as if the desert itself, this sleeping ocean of time, is sighing in its sleep, telling of eternity, of its immense loneliness, and of the music hidden in the very heart of silence. The desert, seemingly the embodiment of lifelessness, holds other secrets that manifest only once every few years or even decades, like a rare, precious thought. The phenomenon of the flowering desert, or desierto florido, in Chile's Atacama is one of the most striking and ephemeral spectacles on the planet. After unusually heavy rains brought by the El Niño oceanic phenomenon, the seeds and bulbs of more than 200 plant species, dormant beneath the parched, cracked earth, suddenly receive a signal to awaken. Within a few weeks, the lifeless ochre landscape is covered by a dense carpet of millions of pink, purple, white, and yellow mallow and nolana flowers. This fleeting miracle, a true triumph of life over harshness, proves that even in the most inhospitable corners of the earth, hope does not die but merely slumbers in the darkness, waiting for just a drop of heavenly moisture to bloom in full, stunning force and remind the world of the hidden potential within any void. In other deserts, on the sun-scorched plains of southern Africa, one can encounter another mystery, the enigmatic fairy circles of Namibia. These are perfectly round patches of bare, barren earth, 2 to 15 meters in diameter, each surrounded by a distinct ring of tall, lush grass, creating a surreal polka dot pattern on the landscape, visible even from space. For decades, scientists debated their origin, proposing theories ranging from subterranean termite nests to toxic fumes and poisonous plants. Today, the most plausible hypothesis is considered to be the self-organization of the ecosystem under conditions of fierce competition for water. The plants compete for the scarce moisture, and this struggle naturally creates a pattern where the stronger grasses on the edges of the circle draw all the water from the inside and from their neighbors, leaving the center completely empty. These circles are the living geometry of survival, a visible pattern of an invisible struggle for life, written on the canvas of the desert by nature itself. But it is not only plants that create patterns on the body of the earth. Sometimes, stones also join this silent dance. In Death Valley, on the perfectly flat floor of the dried lakebed racetrack playa, heavy boulders seem to come to life and travel on their own, leaving long, winding tracks behind them. For decades, their movement was one of the greatest geological mysteries, as no one had ever seen them move. Only recently, with the help of GPS trackers and time-lapse photography, has the mystery been solved. In winter, a thin layer of rainwater forms on the lakebed, which freezes at night, turning into enormous but very thin sheets of ice, like window panes. During the day, as the ice begins to melt and crack into giant panels, even the slightest wind pushes these ice rafts, which in turn slowly and majestically move the rocks frozen within them at a speed of several meters per minute. It is a dance of ice, wind, and stone, a slow and almost imperceptible waltz that lasts an eternity on the scale of a human life. Eternity is the natural measure of time for a stone, and sometimes a stone can capture something as fleeting and fierce as a lightning strike. When a discharge of atmospheric electricity strikes sandy soil or rock, the temperature in the discharge channel reaches 30,000 degrees for a fraction of a second, instantly melting the sand. Cooling almost as quickly, the molten quartz transforms into a hollow, often branching glass tube known as a fulgurite. These petrified lightning bolts precisely follow the winding path of the discharge as it travels deep into the earth, creating a glass cast of celestial fire. To find a fulgurite is to hold in your hands the frozen imprint of a moment of incredible energy, the fragile root of a celestial tree grown into the body of the planet. It is a ghostly testament that even the most fierce and fleeting event can leave behind an eternal, albeit incredibly fragile, trace. Traces of the past are preserved not only in the form of glass tubes, but also in the very structure of immense cliffs. The layers of sedimentary rock are the pages of Earth's Great Stone Chronicle, where each page can tell a story millions of years long. Slowly, year after year, century after century, dust, sand, silt, and the remains of living organisms settled on the bottoms of ancient seas and lakes, compacting into stone under their own weight and the weight of the water. The different colors, textures, and compositions of the layers speak of climate change, of volcanic eruptions whose ash settled as a thin, dark stratum, of the appearance and disappearance of species whose shells and bones became part of the rock. Looking at a cross-section of such a cliff somewhere in the Grand Canyon, we are literally reading the history of the world, written not with ink, but with time, pressure, and matter itself. It is a library where each book weighs thousands of tons, and reading a single chapter takes entire geological epochs. Within these stone books, in their voids and fissures, lie hidden true treasures, crystals, perfect geometric forms born in the absolute darkness and silence of the Earth's depths. A crystal is not just a beautiful stone. It is matter that has reached the highest degree of internal order, a frozen utopia, under conditions of immense pressure and high temperatures. In a mineral-rich solution, atoms slowly, one by one, arrange themselves into a perfect lattice, repeating the same flawless structure over and over, like a silent mantra. The growth of even a small crystal can take millions of years. It is a deeply meditative process, during which the initial chaos of the solution transforms into the perfect harmony of form. Each crystal is a frozen symmetry, a materialized idea of order, carried through geological eras to one day reveal its cold, pure light on the surface. Among these mineral treasures, there is one that is not a stone in the strict sense of the word, but rather solidified organic matter, a tear of the ancient world, amber. It is the fossilized resin of prehistoric coniferous trees which has lain in the earth for tens of millions of years. Drops of viscous, sticky resin flowing down the trunks, often captured unwary insects, spiders, plant. Pollen, air bubbles, or even tiny dinosaur feathers in their embrace. Time and pressure slowly transformed this resin into a hard, warm-to-the-touch stone, preserving within it perfect three-dimensional imprints of a long-vanished world. Each piece of amber with an inclusion is a tiny time capsule, a flawless window into the past, allowing us to glimpse a world that has disappeared forever. It is the tear of a prehistoric forest, which has become a jewel holding within it the DNA of epochs. But the most common and scientifically important time capsules are fossils, the stone ghosts of past life. The process of fossilization is a slow and subtle miracle of replacement. When a living creature died and its remains were quickly buried under a layer of silt or sand, cutting off the oxygen supply and slowing decomposition, a long alchemical process began. Groundwater rich in minerals seeped through porous bones or shells. Molecule by molecule, the organic matter was replaced by inorganic matter, calcite, silica, pyrite, precisely replicating the original microscopic structure. In the end, nothing of the creature itself remained, only its stone double, an exact copy capable of surviving millions of years of tectonic shifts and erosion. Each fossil is an echo of life, frozen in stone, a dialogue between eternity and an instant. Sometimes, not a single creature, but an entire forest can fossilize, turning into a landscape from another world. Petrified forests, like the famous park in Arizona, tell the story of ancient cataclysms and the slow magic of geology. Millions of years ago, these giant coniferous trees were toppled and buried under a thick layer of volcanic ash or a mud flow, which cut off oxygen and halted the process of decay. Then, as with bones, the process of mineralization began. Water saturated with silica from the volcanic ash slowly permeated the wood. Over time, every cell of the tree, every detail of its structure, was replaced by particles of quartz, chalcedony, or opal, often colored by impurities, into incredible hues. Thus, the giant trunks turned into colorful stone columns, preserving even the pattern of their growth rings, the silent witnesses of ancient winters and springs. And at times, nature creates not just copies, but entirely new, bizarre forms that only imitate life, as if the mineral kingdom yearns for the organic one. Iron-manganese concretions, or dendrites, are often mistaken for delicate imprints of ancient ferns or mosses. In reality, these are purely mineral patterns that form when water rich in manganese and iron oxides seeps through the finest cracks between layers of limestone or sandstone. As the water evaporates, the minerals crystallize, growing into complex fractal patterns strikingly reminiscent of tree branches, corals, or the frost patterns on a winter windowpane. This is not fossilized life, but merely its mineral dream, a drawing that inorganic chemistry itself inscribes on cold stone, as if recalling the forms of the living world and imitating it in its quiet, unhurried game. The living world, in turn, has learned to become a great architect itself, creating structures visible from space. The Great Barrier Reef off the northeastern coast of Australia is the largest structure on the planet created by living organisms. Billions and trillions of tiny coral polyps, simple creatures resembling miniature sea anemones, have built their limestone skeletons, one on top of another, over millennia. Each polyp lives in symbiosis with microscopic algae, zooxanthellae, which give the coral its color and supply it with food. When a polyp dies, it leaves behind its hard skeleton, on which a new generation settles. Thus, layer by layer, a gigantic underwater ecosystem emerges, a living city that constantly grows, changes, and breathes, providing a home for thousands of other species. This reef is a silent monument to the fact that the most grandiose structures on Earth can be created not by brute force, but by the slow, persistent, and collective labor of tiny creatures. Tiny creatures are also behind another geological wonder that forms entire landscapes, chalk cliffs, like those that gleam dazzlingly white on the coast of Dover. These majestic cliffs are composed almost entirely of the microscopic skeletons of single-celled planktonic algae, coccolithophores. Each such alga surrounded itself with a protective sphere of dozens of limestone plates, coccoliths. Hundreds of millions of years ago, in the warm seas of the Cretaceous period, these organisms flourished in unimaginable numbers. As they died, their tiny shells settled on the ocean floor, forming many meter-thick layers of white ooze. Over time, this ooze, under the pressure of water and new deposits, was compressed into a soft, porous rock, chalk. Looking at these white cliffs, we see not just stone, but a vast cemetery of microscopic life that has become the foundation for modern landscapes. Landscapes are formed not only by accumulation, but also by erosion, creating voids where there was solid ground. Caves are the scars and hollows that water slowly and patiently carves into the body of the planet. When rainwater absorbs carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and soil, it turns into a weak carbonic acid. This acid, harmless to most rocks, is capable of slowly dissolving limestone, gypsum, and dolomite. Seeping through cracks and faults, water expands them over thousands and millions of years, creating underground rivers, huge chambers, and intricate labyrinths. A cave is a negative space, a sculpture created not by adding, but by removing material. It is a slow, drawn-out exhale of the earth, which has left behind a resonant silence, coolness, and eternal darkness. Within this primordial darkness, its own special, unhurried beauty is born. Stalactites and stalagmites are stone icicles and towers that grow in caves with the patience of geological time. The process of their growth is a mirror image of the process of the cave's own creation. Water, saturated with dissolved calcium carbonate, seeps from the ceiling. Each drop, before falling, leaves a microscopic ring of mineral on the ceiling. Drop by drop, century by century, this ring grows downward, forming a hollow straw and then a massive stalactite. Some of the water falls to the floor, and there, as it evaporates, it leaves another portion of mineral, from which a stalagmite begins to grow upward. Sometimes they meet, forming a single column, a stone kiss, frozen in silence for millennia. But caves hold not only elegant stone patterns, but also entire subterranean worlds that stagger the imagination. In Mexico's Cave of Crystals, discovered by chance during mining operations, are the largest crystals ever found on the planet. Giant, translucent beams of selenite, a variety of gypsum, reach 12 meters in length and weigh up to 55 tons. They grew over hundreds of thousands of years in a cavity flooded with hot, mineral-rich water at a depth of 300 meters. The conditions there were so stable, a constant temperature of about 58 degrees Celsius and an ideal solution saturation, that nothing prevented the crystals from slowly but surely reaching gigantic sizes. This subterranean crystal palace is a testament to the unimaginable wonders nature can create if given enough time, tranquility, and stability. Tranquility is what other subterranean spaces lack, where instead of still water, raging fire reigned. Lava tubes are caves of volcanic origin, underground corridors left behind by flows of molten rock. When a flow of liquid basaltic lava moves across the surface, its top layer and walls cool in the air and solidify, forming a solid insulating crust. Beneath this crust, the lava, protected from cooling, continues to flow like a river in a tunnel. When the eruption ends and the lava source runs dry, the molten rock drains from the tunnel under the force of gravity, leaving behind a long, hollow cave. These tubes can stretch for many kilometers, creating entire networks of underground conduits through which the molten heart of the Earth once flowed, and which today serve as a refuge for unique ecosystems. The Earth's heart continues to beat, and its heat manifests on the surface not only in the form of lava flows. Geysers are rare and impressive fountains of boiling water that periodically erupt from beneath the ground with a deafening roar. They exist only where groundwater comes into close contact with magmatic rocks. Water in deep and narrow underground channels is heated far above its boiling point, but the immense pressure of the overlying layers of water and rock prevents it from turning into steam. Finally, a steam bubble forms in the lower part of the system, which begins to push the column of water upward. This leads to a sharp drop in pressure throughout the system, and all the superheated water instantly boils, ejecting to the surface in a powerful jet of steam and boiling water. A geyser is a safety valve through which the Earth releases its excess internal pressure. Sometimes this subterranean heat creates not furious fountains, but quiet, multicolored pools resembling an artist's palette. Multicolored hot springs, such as the Grand Prismatic Spring in Yellowstone Park, owe their incredible palette not to dissolved minerals, but to life. The different colors, from deep blue in the center to green, yellow, orange, and brown along the edges, are created by vast colonies of thermophilic bacteria and archaea. These microorganisms thrive in the hot, nearly boiling water. Each species of bacteria is adapted to its own specific temperature, so as the water cools from the center toward the edges of the spring, the composition of the microbial communities changes, and with it, the color of the water. These springs are living paintings that nature creates with microscopic life, demonstrating its resilience and beauty. Microscopic life is capable not only of coloring water, but also of creating entire stone structures that serve as the most ancient record. Stromatolites are some of the most ancient and important evidence of life on Earth. Their age can reach 3.5 billion years. These are layered stone formations, created by colonies of cyanobacteria. These microorganisms form sticky mats on the bottom of warm, shallow bodies of water, which trap and bind sediment particles, sand and silt. Striving for sunlight for photosynthesis, the bacteria grow through this sediment, forming a new living layer on top of the old one. Over time, this layered cake of bacterial mats and sediment petrifies, turning into a stromatolite. Looking at these modest stone mounds, we see living fossils, a bridge to that distant world when Earth's atmosphere did not yet contain oxygen. It was these modest cyanobacteria, the builders of stromatolites, that brought about the greatest ecological revolution in the planet's history, known as the oxygen catastrophe. About 4 billion years ago, in the process of photosynthesis, they began to release vast quantities of oxygen as a byproduct of their life processes. For most of the anaerobic organisms inhabiting Earth at that time, free oxygen was a deadly poison that caused oxidative stress. This led to the first mass extinction in history, but at the same time created the conditions for the emergence of new, more complex life forms that learned to use oxygen for respiration, a much more efficient way of obtaining energy. We breathe air that was created by billions of tiny creatures that poisoned their world to give rise to ours. The planet remembers this global catastrophe in its very geology. The vast deposits of banded iron formations, which today are the main source of iron for our civilization, are a direct consequence of it. Before the appearance of oxygen in the atmosphere, the oceans were rich in dissolved divalent iron. When cyanobacteria began to produce oxygen, it reacted with this iron, causing insoluble iron oxide, essentially rust, to precipitate onto the seabed. Periodic fluctuations in bacterial activity or in the supply of iron led to the alternation of layers rich and poor in iron oxides, creating the characteristic banded structure. These mountains of ore that we mine today are the rust of the ancient world, the frozen result of the planet's first breath. The ancient world left us not only ore, but also the very water that fills the oceans. The origin of water on Earth is still a subject of scientific debate, and it is most likely the result of several processes. One of the leading theories states that most of the water was delivered to our planet during the early stages of its formation, about 4 billion years ago, by asteroids and comets from the outer cold regions of the solar system. The icy bodies that bombarded the young Earth melted, filling the primordial oceans. Another theory suggests that a significant portion of water was originally contained within mantle minerals and was released to the surface through intense volcanic activity via the degassing of times the planet's interior. Every sip of water we drink has a cosmic or volcanic origin, being part of the most ancient cycle. Water on Earth exists not only on the surface, but also in unimaginable quantities deep inside the planet. In the mantle's transition zone, at a depth of 410 to 660 kilometers, there may be a huge amount of water, estimated by some to be 3 times the volume of all the world's oceans. It is not contained in liquid form, but within the crystal structure of minerals, particularly the blue ringwoodite, which is capable of holding water under immense pressure. This subterranean ocean is not a single reservoir, but rather a damp, spongy zone. This hidden water plays a key role in global geological processes, influencing plate tectonics, volcanism, and the planet's water cycle. Our planet is much wetter on the inside than it appears at first glance, and on the surface, in the dark and cold depths of the ocean, flow their own invisible rivers. When water in one area becomes significantly saltier and therefore denser than the surrounding water, for example due to intense evaporation or the formation of sea ice, it begins to sink to the bottom and flow under the force of gravity, forming a true riverbed. These underwater rivers can be enormous, carrying gigantic volumes of water and even creating their own canyons and deltas on the seabed. One such current in the Black Sea has its own banks, floodplain, and even rapids. These are quiet streams, invisible to the eye, that shape the underwater landscape and are a crucial element of the global circulation of ocean waters, the so-called ocean conveyor belt. An even stranger and more otherworldly phenomenon is underwater salt lakes, or brine pools. These are areas on the ocean floor where the water is so saturated with salt that it becomes much denser than the surrounding seawater and does not mix with it, forming a distinct boundary that resembles a lake's shoreline. Often, these pools, formed over salt deposits, contain dissolved methane and toxic hydrogen sulfide, making them completely uninhabitable for most marine life. For oxygen-breathing organisms, falling into such a pool is equivalent to drowning in toxic water. These dead, motionless lakes on the floor of the living ocean are eerie and mesmerizing anomalies, small alien worlds in the abyss of our own. In this same abyss, in the complete and eternal absence of sunlight, there exists life based not on photosynthesis, but on chemosynthesis. Around hydrothermal vents, so-called black smokers, true oases of life flourish. From these fissures in the seafloor erupts water superheated to 400 degrees, saturated with minerals and sulfur compounds from the Earth's interior. Amazing chemosynthetic bacteria use the energy from chemical reactions of hydrogen sulfide oxidation to create organic matter, just as plants use the energy of light. These bacteria form the basis of a unique food chain for strange creatures: giant tube worms with no mouth or gut, blind white crabs, and bizarre mollusks. This is life that feeds not on the light of the sun, but on the hot breath of the Earth itself. Life in the impenetrable depths has learned to create its own cold light. Bioluminescence, the ability of living organisms to glow as a result of chemical reactions, is widespread in the ocean, especially at great depths. From microscopic plankton, flaring up in myriads of sparks from the movement of waves, to complex deep-sea fish, light is used for hunting, defense, camouflage, and communication in the eternal darkness. Some anglerfish use a luminous lure to entice prey directly to their mouths. Squids can release a cloud of glowing mucus instead of ink to blind and disorient a predator. It is a cold, quiet light, the silent language of the abyss, turning the gloom into a theater of shadows and ghostly lights. Sometimes this glow becomes visible on a truly planetary scale, turning the night ocean into a fantastic spectacle. The Milky Sea phenomenon is a rare and not yet fully understood occurrence where vast areas of the ocean, thousands of square kilometers in size, begin to glow with a steady, continuous, milky white light. Unlike the sparkling glow of ordinary plankton disturbed by movement, this luminescence is constant and uniform, as if looking at a snow-covered field on a moonlit night. Scientists believe it is caused by giant colonies of bioluminescent bacteria, Vibrio harveyi, which enter into symbiosis with microalgae. When their concentration reaches a certain threshold, they synchronize their glow, turning the dark surface of the ocean into a luminous, otherworldly fog. Fog and clouds over the ocean play a key role in shaping the weather, and their very existence depends on the tiniest invisible particles. For the ubiquitous water vapor to condense into droplets, it needs condensation nuclei, microscopic particles of dust, salt, or the waste products of plankton. Marine phytoplankton, the foundation of the oceanic food chain, releases a gaseous substance called dimethyl sulfide, DMS. Upon entering the atmosphere, DMS oxidizes, forming sulfate aerosols that serve as ideal centers for the formation of cloud droplets. Thus, the tiniest organisms in the ocean directly influence the quantity, density, and brightness of clouds, and therefore the climate of the entire planet, by regulating the amount of reflected sunlight. This is an example of a striking feedback loop in the Earth's system. Our planet also has its own, barely perceptible sound, a constant low-frequency hum that can only be detected by the most sensitive seismographs. This hum of the Earth is not related to earthquakes and constantly vibrates at frequencies from 2 to 7 millihertz, which is far below the threshold of human hearing. Its exact origin is still a subject of debate. The main hypotheses link it to the resonant interaction of ocean waves with the seafloor or to turbulent processes in the atmosphere. Whatever its source, it is a constant, quiet vibration of the entire planet, like the deep, slow breath of a sleeping giant, which we cannot hear, but which permeates all that exists. The planet's breath can be felt more literally by observing global cycles. The Earth inhales and exhales carbon dioxide depending on the change of seasons. In spring and summer in the northern hemisphere, where the main mass of terrestrial vegetation is concentrated, the lush growth of forests and fields leads to the active absorption of CO2 from the atmosphere. Through photosynthesis, the planet takes a deep breath. In autumn and winter, when leaves fall and plants become dormant, the processes of organic decomposition begin to prevail, and the concentration of CO2 in the atmosphere rises again. The planet takes a slow exhale. These seasonal fluctuations, recorded on the famous Keeling curve, are a clear and beautiful depiction of the pulse of life on Earth on a planetary scale. Life on Earth forms invisible but incredibly complex connections. Trees in a forest do not simply grow side by side as rivals. They are united in a complex underground network that scientists sometimes call the wood wide web. Tree roots enter into symbiotic relationships with fungi, forming mycorrhizae. The mycelium, consisting of the finest threads called hyphae, envelops the roots and spreads over vast distances, connecting tens and hundreds of trees into a single information and nutrient system. Through this network, trees can exchange nutrients, water, and even alarm signals. Old, mother trees can feed young, shaded saplings, and a tree attacked by pests can send chemical signals to its neighbors so they can prepare their defenses. A forest is not a collection of individuals, but a single, thinking superorganism. Some trees live so long that they become silent witnesses to the rise and fall of entire civilizations. The Great Basin bristlecone pine, which grows in the harsh conditions of the White Mountains in California, is one of the longest-living non-clonal organisms on the planet. The age of some specimens, such as the famous tree named Methuselah, exceeds 4,150 years. These trees sprouted when the Great Pyramids of Giza had not yet been built in Egypt, and continue to grow to this day, having survived countless droughts, storms, and fires. Their secret lies in extremely slow growth, the ability to survive in the poorest soils, and to shut down entire parts of their organism, such as large branches, to conserve resources and survive difficult times. These gnarled, ancient guardians of the mountains are living chronicles of millennia, written in the language of tree rings. And some plants have chosen a strategy not of individual longevity, but of perfect collective synchronization. In bamboo groves around the world, an amazing and mysterious phenomenon of mass flowering is observed. All plants of a certain species, regardless of their age, health, or location on the continent, flower at the exact same time. This cycle can last for several decades, and for some species, more than 100 years. After this mass flowering and fruiting, the entire grove, having spent all its resources, dies. This mechanism likely serves to oversaturate predators, such as rats and other rodents, with an unimaginable quantity of seeds, ensuring that at least some of them will survive and give rise to a new generation. It is an act of collective, programmed self-sacrifice for the sake of the entire species' future. The future of their species also concerns animals, and they sometimes create grandiose, intricately designed structures for this purpose. Termite mounds, especially in the savannas of Africa and Australia, can reach heights of several meters and are highly complex engineering structures with astonishing architecture. These are not just piles of earth, but self-regulating cities. Inside a termite mound, a stable temperature and humidity are maintained thanks to a complex system of ventilation channels and pores that operate on the principle of convection. Some species of termites, macroterms, even cultivate special fungal gardens on chewed wood inside their structures, which serve as their primary food source. A termite mound is a city organism, built by millions of blind insects according to a complex genetic blueprint, a perfect example of collective intelligence. Insects are capable of other, no less impressive collective feats. Every autumn, millions of monarch butterflies embark on an incredible journey from Canada and the northern U.S. states to their wintering grounds in central Mexico, covering up to 4,000 kilometers. The most surprising thing is that no single butterfly makes this journey twice. The generation that flies south has never been to Mexico. This is a special, long-lived Methuselah generation. In the spring, they awaken, mate, and fly north, but they lay eggs along the way and die. It is their children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren who return. How they find their way to the very same trees remains one of nature's greatest mysteries. It is believed that they use the sun's position, an internal compass, and possibly even olfactory cues, passing the map from generation to generation on a genetic level. It's not just butterflies that can navigate using the Earth's magnetic field. Many animals, from sea turtles and salmon to migratory birds and even cows, possess an internal compass that aids them in long-distance migrations. This mechanism, called magnetoreception, is not yet fully understood and is a subject of active research. One theory suggests the presence of microscopic magnetite crystals in the cells of their bodies, which act like a compass needle, mechanically affecting nerve endings. Another, more complex one is related to quantum effects in cryptochrome proteins found in the retina of the eye. According to this hypothesis, birds can literally see the Earth's magnetic field lines as a pattern of light and shadow superimposed on the surrounding landscape, which gives them an incredibly accurate map. The Earth's magnetic field itself is an invisible but powerful shield, a cocoon, protecting all life on the planet from the destructive stream of charged particles known as the solar wind. It is generated in the planet's liquid outer core, which consists of molten iron and nickel. The movement of this electrically conductive metal, caused by the Earth's rotation, the Coriolis effect, and convective heat flows from the inner core, creates powerful electrical currents. These currents, in turn, generate the magnetic field on the principle of a dynamo. This field is not static. Its poles constantly drift, and from time to time, once every few 100,000 years, they reverse. Without this invisible cocoon, the solar wind would have long ago stripped away the Earth's atmosphere, turning it into a lifeless world similar to Mars. Sometimes this invisible shield puts on a grand light show in the heavens, the polar lights, or aurora. When solar flares or coronal mass ejections occur on the sun, it ejects streams of high-energy charged particles into space. Earth's magnetic field deflects most of this flow, but near the poles, where the field lines plunge into the planet, forming funnels, particles can penetrate the upper layers of the atmosphere. Colliding with oxygen and nitrogen atoms at altitudes from 100 to 400 kilometers, they excite them, causing them to glow. Oxygen produces green and red light, while nitrogen produces blue and violet. The aurora is the visible result of a cosmic battle between the solar wind and Earth's magnetic field, a majestic and silent dance of light at the edge of the world. High above the dancing lights of the aurora, in the cold and rarefied mesosphere, an even rarer and more ghostly phenomenon can be observed: noctilucent clouds. They appear in deep twilight during the summer months in near-polar latitudes and glow with a mysterious, ethereal bluish-white light. These are the highest clouds in Earth's atmosphere, located at an altitude of about 85 kilometers, where ordinary clouds cannot exist. They consist of tiny water ice crystals that form around particles of meteoric dust, cosmic dust that burns up in the atmosphere. The sun, long set below the horizon for an observer on the ground, continues to illuminate these exceptionally high clouds, creating the effect of an otherworldly glow against the darkening starry sky. Even higher, at the very edge of space, short-lived and incredibly powerful electrical discharges occur, the existence of which scientists only learned about at the end of the 20th century. Sprites, elves, and blue jets are not fairy tale creatures, but types of high-altitude lightning that strike not downward, but upward from thunderclouds. Sprites are gigantic but faint red flashes, resembling jellyfish or carrots, that shoot up from the tops of thunderclouds to an altitude of 90 kilometers. Blue jets are narrower cones of blue light that shoot into the stratosphere. Elves are huge, rapidly expanding rings of light at the boundary of the ionosphere. These phenomena last for thousandths of a second and are part of the planet's global electrical circuit, connecting thunderstorms with the upper layers of the atmosphere. The entire atmosphere, from the surface to space, has a weight that we do not notice, but which is enormous. The column of air pressing down on every square meter of the Earth's surface at sea level weighs about 10 tons. We do not feel this incredible pressure because it acts from all sides and is completely balanced by the pressure of the fluids and gases inside our bodies. The total weight of Earth's atmosphere is about 5,000 trillion tons. This invisible but heavy gaseous shell not only gives us air to breathe, but also protects us from meteorites, most of which burn up in it, and from the sun's harsh ultraviolet radiation. We live at the bottom of an ocean of air, and its weight is the guarantee of our safety and peace. This ocean of air is turbulent and sometimes gives birth to amazing, almost artificial-looking shapes. One of the strangest and most beautiful atmospheric phenomena is lenticular, or lens-shaped clouds. They often form on the leeward side of mountain ranges and have a smooth, lentil-like or saucer-like shape, which is why they are often mistaken for unidentified flying objects. They occur when a stable and moist airflow, flowing around a mountain obstacle, forms a series of standing air waves behind it. At the crests of these waves, the air cools and the moisture condenses, forming a cloud. Since the air is constantly moving through the wave and the cloud forms at its stationary point, it appears frozen in the sky, hanging in one place even in very strong winds. It is a river wave frozen in the sky, a sculpture of wind and water. Rivers flow not only in the sky, but also beneath a multi-kilometer thick sheet of ice. In Antarctica, hidden from sight and sunlight, there exists an entire network of more than 400 subglacial lakes. The largest of them, Lake Vostok, is comparable in area to Lake Ontario and is up to a kilometer deep. The water in these lakes remains liquid thanks to the heat coming from the Earth's interior and the immense pressure of the ice, which lowers the freezing point of water. These lakes have been completely isolated from the rest of the world for millions of years. Scientists who have drilled through the ice hope to find unique life forms in their waters that have evolved in complete darkness, cold, and isolation, possibly feeding on minerals from the lake bed. From one of Antarctica's glaciers, the Taylor Glacier, flows the eerie and mesmerizing Blood Falls. Periodically, a stream of salt water, colored a rich blood red, bursts from a fissure in the ice onto the surface of the snow-white glacier. This color is not the result of algae activity, but pure chemistry. The water comes from a small subglacial lake that is very rich in ferrous iron. Having been trapped under the ice and cut off from the atmosphere for nearly 2 million years, this water has had no contact with oxygen. When it finally reaches the surface, the iron in it oxidizes instantly, forming rust, iron hydroxide, which gives the water its frightening but natural color. These are the salty, rusty tears of an ancient world locked in an icy prison. The glaciers of Antarctica and Greenland hold not only trapped water, but also priceless information about our planet's past. The ice cores that scientists drill are another natural chronicle, similar to layers of sedimentary rock, but much more detailed. Each year, falling snow is compressed by the weight of new layers into ice, trapping air bubbles from that time, particles of volcanic dust, plant pollen, and even traces of cosmic dust. By analyzing the chemical and isotopic composition of the ice and the gas in these bubbles, scientists can accurately determine the atmospheric composition and the average temperature on the planet hundreds of thousands of years ago. Glaciers are a frozen archive of Earth's climate, allowing us to read the history of weather from the frozen breath of the past. Earth's past was marked not only by ice ages, but also by eras of incredible greenhouse heat. About 56 million years ago, the Paleocene-Eocene thermal maximum occurred, one of the most rapid and extreme periods of warming in geological history. Over a very short period by geological standards, a few thousand years, the average global temperature rose by 8 degrees Celsius. The cause was likely a massive release of carbon into the atmosphere, possibly due to volcanic activity or the release of methane from the ocean floor. As a result, the polar ice caps completely melted, sea levels rose, and palm trees grew and crocodiles lived on the Arctic coast. This event serves as an important warning about how quickly Earth's climate can change and how sensitive our planet is to the composition of its atmosphere. The climate changes, and with it, even more slowly, the continents move. The theory of plate tectonics, which revolutionized the Earth sciences, describes how the planet's solid outer shell, the lithosphere, is divided into several huge plates that slowly drift on the semi-liquid viscous asthenosphere. Their speed of movement is comparable to the growth rate of human fingernails, just a few centimeters per year. But over millions of years, this leads to grandiose changes in the planet's geography. Continents collide, forming the highest mountain ranges, like the Himalayas at the collision site of India and Asia. Or they diverge, creating new oceans, like the Atlantic, which continues to expand today. The entire geography of our planet is just a snapshot in the endless, slow dance of the continents. This dance is not always smooth and graceful. Earthquakes are the result of the abrupt release of colossal energy accumulated in the Earth's crust due to the friction of moving plates. When plates snag on each other, the stress in the rocks builds up for years and decades. When it exceeds the breaking strength, a rupture occurs, and the plates shift by meters in a matter of seconds, generating seismic waves. But there is also a quieter, more mysterious phenomenon: slow earthquakes, or silent slips. These are events in which the plate displacement occurs very slowly, over days, weeks, or even months. They release a huge amount of energy, comparable to strong earthquakes, but do so smoothly that they are barely felt on the surface. These are the silent, deep sighs of the Earth's crust. The Earth's crust is constantly being created and destroyed in a continuous cycle of renewal. At mid-ocean ridges, giant underwater mountain chains where tectonic plates diverge, molten magma rises from the mantle. It solidifies and forms new oceanic crust, which builds up on both sides of the ridge. And in subduction zones, usually at the edges of continents, where a denser oceanic plate dives under a continental one, the old crust plunges back into the hot mantle, melts, and is recycled. This cycle of complete renewal of the ocean floor takes about 200 million years. Therefore, the ocean floors are geologically very young compared to the ancient cores of the continents, whose age can reach several billion years. The ocean is constantly renewing its skin. The skin of the earth, soil, is not just dirt under our feet, but one of the most complex and densely populated living systems on the planet. A single teaspoon of healthy, fertile soil contains more living organisms than there are people on the entire earth. These are billions of bacteria, fungi, protozoa, nematodes, mites, and other microscopic creatures that form an incredibly complex food web. They participate in nutrient cycling, decompose dead organic matter, fix nitrogen from the atmosphere, and make nutrients available to plant roots. Soil is a thin, precious, and almost non-renewable layer. It can take hundreds of years to form just 1 centimeter. It is a living, breathing membrane through which the planet feeds and breathes. Sometimes this living earth, or rather water, can turn into an invisible and deadly trap. A limnic eruption or lake overturn is an extremely rare and dangerous natural phenomenon. In some deep volcanic lakes, such as Lake Nyos in Cameroon, a huge amount of dissolved carbon dioxide, originating from magmatic sources, can accumulate at the bottom under immense water pressure. If a disturbance occurs, such as a landslide, an earthquake, or even a sharp cooling of the upper water layer, it can trigger an effect similar to opening a bottle of soda. A massive bubble of CO2 is abruptly released from the bottom and, being 1.5 times heavier than air, spreads across the surrounding area, displacing oxygen. The cloud of suffocating gas moves silently through valleys, causing instant death by asphyxiation to all living things in its path. The path of life leads not only upward, toward the light, but also downward, into the darkness. There are organisms that have made their home in the depths of the Earth's crust, existing in complete isolation from the surface world. The deep biosphere is a world of microbes living kilometers below the land surface and the ocean floor, in the pores and fractures of rock formations. These intraterrestrials, bacteria and archaea, exist under conditions of incredible pressure, high temperatures, and a complete absence of light and oxygen. They derive energy from slow, chemical reactions involving rocks and water, and exist on a completely different timescale. Their metabolism is so slow that they may divide only once every 100 or even 1,000 years. The total biomass of this hidden life, by some estimates, may exceed the biomass of all humans on the planet. Some of these subterranean inhabitants may be direct descendants of the very first life forms on Earth. One of the leading hypotheses about the origin of life, abiogenesis, suggests that it did not happen in a warm little pond on the surface, as Darwin proposed, but deep within the pores of rocks near submarine hydrothermal vents. These places were protected from the harsh ultraviolet radiation of the young sun and from the constant meteorite bombardment that sterilized the surface of the early Earth. Here, in the darkness and warmth, in a chemically rich broth, the first self-replicating molecules could have formed. Perhaps life on our planet was born in darkness and silence, and only later, having grown stronger, emerged into the light. Light and shadow on the Earth's surface create amazing optical illusions, playing with our perception. The Brocken specter is an atmospheric phenomenon that can be observed in the mountains or from an airplane when the sun shines from behind the observer and their shadow falls on a layer of fog or clouds below. The shadow appears disproportionately huge and is often surrounded by a rainbow-colored halo, called a glory. The magnification effect is an illusion caused by the brain, lacking reference points on the uniform background of the fog, incorrectly judging the distance to the shadow and its size. The glory, in turn, arises from the complex process of diffraction and backscattering of light on tiny water droplets in the cloud. It is a mystical and beautiful encounter with one's own gigantic and rainbow-hued double in the heavens. Another well-known illusion, the mirage, is a play of light in layers of air of different densities and temperatures. Inferior mirages, which create the effect of a wet road on a hot day or a lake in the desert, occur when the air right at the surface is strongly heated and less dense. Rays of light from the sky or distant objects passing through this layer bend upward, and to our eye, it seems as if they are coming from the ground, creating an inverted image that looks like a reflection in water. Superior mirages, conversely, occur in cold Arctic air, when the rays bend downward, and can make objects located far beyond the horizon, for example ships or islands, appear to be hanging in the sky. A mirage is not a hallucination, but a real physical phenomenon, a trick of the eye created by the atmosphere itself. The sky sometimes, for just a moment, is colored a pure green. The green flash is a rare and beautiful optical phenomenon that can be seen above the upper edge of the sun at the moment of its sunrise or sunset. When the sun is at the very horizon, its light passes through a greater thickness of the atmosphere, which acts like a giant prism, splitting white light into the colors of the rainbow. Red and orange rays, which have a longer wavelength, are scattered or absorbed more strongly, while green and blue ones bend more. At the very last moment, when the main part of the solar disk disappears behind the horizon, for a fraction of a second, only its green and sometimes blue edge remains visible. It is a fleeting emerald flash, an elusive farewell of the day. Bidding farewell to the earth, the sun leaves behind not only darkness, but also its ghostly echo, the counterglow, or Gegenschein. This is a faintly visible oval patch of weak light in the night sky, located at the point directly opposite the sun. It is caused by the backscattering effect of sunlight on particles of interplanetary dust, which are concentrated at the L2 Lagrange point of the Earth-Sun system, a point of gravitational equilibrium. The counterglow can only be seen on a very dark, moonless night, far from city lights, when the eyes have fully adapted to the darkness. This ghostly, almost imperceptible glow is reflected sunlight returning to us from the depths of space, from the shadow of the Earth itself. Space constantly showers the Earth with its dust, adding to the planet's weight. Every year, about 40,000 tons of interplanetary dust settle on our planet, microscopic particles left over from the disintegration of comets and the collision of asteroids. These particles, measuring hundredths of a millimeter in size, are too small to burn up in the atmosphere like meteors, and they slowly, over weeks and months, descend to the surface. They are absolutely everywhere, on the roofs of our houses, in the glaciers of Antarctica, at the bottom of the deepest oceans. Every speck of dust under our feet could be a particle from a distant comet that traveled through the solar system for millions of years before finding its eternal rest on Earth. We constantly breathe, drink, and tread on cosmic matter. Sometimes, much larger visitors also arrive from space, leaving deep scars on the face of the planet. The Chicxulub crater on the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico is the mark of an impact from a giant asteroid about 10 kilometers in diameter that struck the Earth 66 million years ago. This impact, with a power billions of times greater than an atomic bomb, caused catastrophic consequences. Giant tsunamis, wildfires across the globe, and the release of so much dust and soot into the atmosphere that a long impact winter ensued. Sunlight could not penetrate to the surface, leading to the death of plants and the collapse of food chains, causing a mass extinction in which the dinosaurs and 3/4 of all species on Earth disappeared. This scar, hidden under kilometers of sedimentary rock, is a reminder of how fragile life can be and how events in space can fundamentally change the history of our planet. But space not only destroys, but also, perhaps, creates. Many scientists adhere to the hypothesis that complex organic molecules, the building blocks of life, could have been brought to the early lifeless Earth by comets and meteorites. Within some meteorites, such as the Murchison meteorite that fell in Australia, dozens of different amino acids, the building blocks of proteins, have been discovered. as well as sugars, fatty acids, and components of nucleic acids. This does not mean that life was brought from space in its entirety, the panspermia hypothesis, but perhaps this constant cosmic rain of organics provided the young planet with the necessary starter kit of chemical ingredients from which the first life originated in terrestrial conditions. Our planet, where life originated, is not a perfect sphere as we are accustomed to thinking. Due to the centrifugal force generated by its rotation, it is slightly flattened at the poles and expanded at the equator, having a shape that scientists call a geoid. This equatorial bulge is about 21 kilometers. This means that if distance is measured not from sea level, but from the Earth's center, the highest and most distant point on the planet. From the center would not be the summit of Mount Everest, but the summit of the extinct volcano Chimborazo in Ecuador. Because it is located almost on the equator, its peak is approximately 2 kilometers farther from the planet's center than the peak of Everest, although its height above sea level is significantly less. Not only is the Earth irregularly shaped, but it also slightly wobbles as it rotates, like an imperfectly spun top. The Chandler wobble is a small periodic shift in the Earth's axis of rotation relative to its surface. The amplitude of this wobble is only a few meters on the surface, and a full cycle takes about 433 days. It is caused by the fact that the Earth is not a perfectly rigid and symmetrical body, as well as the constant redistribution of mass on its surface. And in its interior, for example, due to ocean currents, atmospheric pressure, and the melting of glaciers. This tiny pulsation, invisible to the naked eye, is another quiet, hidden rhythm of our living and dynamic planet. The rhythm of the Earth's rotation on its axis is also not absolutely constant. It is very slowly, but steadily, slowing down due to the effect of tidal friction caused by the moon's gravitational influence. When dinosaurs walked the Earth, a day was shorter, lasting about 23 hours. Billions of years ago, at the dawn of life, it could have been just a few hours long. To compensate for this slowdown and synchronize our atomic time, UTC, with astronomical time, which is determined by the Earth's rotation, scientists occasionally add a leap second to the year. This tiny adjustment, unnoticeable in daily life, reminds us of the eternal gravitational dance between the Earth and the Moon that has lasted for billions of years. The Moon not only slows the Earth's rotation, it is also slowly but surely moving away from us. Every year, our only natural satellite moves away from Earth by about 3.8 centimeters. This process is also linked to tidal interaction. The tidal bulges that the Moon's gravity creates on Earth end up slightly ahead of the Earth-Moon axis due to the planet's rapid rotation. These bulges, having mass, use their gravity to push the Moon forward in its orbit, causing it to accelerate and move into a higher and therefore more distant orbit. In the distant past, the Moon was much closer to the Earth, appeared enormous in the sky, and caused gigantic ocean tides that may have played a role in the origin of life. The tides, caused by the gravity of the Moon and the Sun, exist not only in the ocean but also in the solid Earth crust. Twice a day, the entire planet, including the continents, deforms under the influence of these forces. The land surface at the point where you are now rises and falls by about 30-50 centimeters. We do not notice these earth tides at all because they occur on a vast planetary scale, and everything around us, houses, trees, mountains, rises and falls along with us. But sensitive scientific instruments, such as gravimeters and GPS stations, clearly detect them. The entire planet constantly and silently breathes, stretching and compressing in rhythm with the celestial bodies. Celestial bodies influence not only the shape of the Earth, but also its climate in the long term. Milankovitch cycles are long-period oscillations in the parameters of the Earth's orbit and the tilt of its axis. Eccentricity, the degree to which the orbit is elongated, axial tilt, and precession, a slow circular motion of the axis, similar to the wobble of a spinning top, change with periods of tens and hundreds of thousands of years. These cycles alter the amount and distribution of sunlight reaching different latitudes at different times of the year. It is believed that these astronomical cycles are the main driving force behind the advance and retreat of ice ages on Earth. Our planet's climate is subject not only to internal processes, but also to the slow, majestic celestial mechanics. The mechanics of the Earth's interior are also full of surprises and complex movements. The Earth's inner core, composed of solid iron and nickel, rotates slightly faster than the rest of the planet, as seismological data show. This incandescent sphere, the size of Pluto, with a surface temperature like that of the Sun, completes one extra rotation approximately every few hundred years. This phenomenon, called superrotation, is likely related to the complex electromagnetic forces generated in the liquid outer core that surrounds the inner one. In the very center of our planet, under conditions of unimaginable pressure and heat, lies another hidden engine of time, rotating according to its own laws. This internal engine does not run on a single fuel. A vast amount of heat has been preserved inside the Earth since its formation from the protoplanetary disk 4.5 billion years ago. But a significant, if not the majority, of the planet's internal heat is generated by the constant decay of radioactive elements such as uranium-238, thorium-232, and potassium-40, which are scattered in small quantities throughout the mantle and crust. In essence, the Earth is a giant, slow-motion nuclear reactor that has been heating itself from within for billions of years. It is this heat that drives the continents, causes volcanoes to erupt, creates the magnetic field, and sustains life in the ocean depths at hydrothermal vents. Sometimes this internal heat and pressure find an outlet in the most unexpected and strange places. Mud volcanoes are not true, magmatic volcanoes. They do not erupt lava. They are geological formations from which gases, mostly methane, and water, mixed with mud, clay, and rock fragments, emerge slowly or violently onto the surface. They can range in size from a small bubbling pool to cones hundreds of meters high. They often form in areas rich in oil and gas, where the pressure of upward-moving gases pushes liquefied rock to the surface. This is the cold, bubbling, and sometimes self-igniting breath of the Earth's sedimentary layers, its hidden gas pockets. The Earth's layers can store not only heat and gas, but also perpetual cold. Permafrost is a layer of soil, rocks, and ice that remains frozen for 2 or more consecutive years. In some regions of Siberia, Alaska, and Canada, it extends to depths of over a kilometer and has not thawed since the last ice age, that is, for tens of thousands of years. In this permafrost, like in a giant natural freezer, not only bones but also entire carcasses of mammoths, woolly rhinoceroses, cave lions, and other extinct animals have been preserved, with skin, fur, and even the remains of their last meal in their stomachs. This is a unique cryogenic archive of the prehistoric world, allowing us to study it in all its detail. This ancient archive is now beginning to thaw rapidly, releasing ghosts of the past. Global warming is leading to the widespread thawing of permafrost, which releases enormous amounts of methane and carbon dioxide into the atmosphere that have been locked away in frozen organic matter for millennia. This creates a dangerous positive feedback loop. The more permafrost thaws, the more greenhouse gases enter the atmosphere, and the stronger the warming becomes. Furthermore, the thawing of permafrost could awaken ancient viruses and bacteria, unknown to science, to which modern organisms, including humans, have no immunity. The immunity and resilience of the entire planet is its amazing capacity for self-regulation. The Gaia hypothesis, proposed by the scientist James Lovelock, views the Earth not as an inert ball of rock, but as a single superorganism. In this system, living beings, the biosphere, actively interact with the non-living environment, the atmosphere, oceans, rocks, to maintain conditions on the planet suitable for life. For example, as we have already seen, plankton influences cloud formation and cools the planet, while forests regulate CO2 levels. This does not mean that the planet has consciousness or a purpose, but it speaks to the incredible complexity and interconnectedness of all its systems, working in a delicate, fragile harmony. This harmony and complexity of physical laws are manifested in the most subtle, barely noticeable details. For example, in the way raindrops fall on the surface of water. When a drop hits the surface, it does not immediately merge with it, as one might expect. For the briefest moment, a very thin layer of air remains between the drop and the surface, preventing them from joining, and the drop bounces on the water as if it were a springy ball. Sometimes it can bounce several times before finally merging with the main body of water. This complex and beautiful hydrodynamic dance, lasting a fraction of a second, is another small miracle of physics that we observe but rarely notice in its fleeting beauty. To notice is to see the unusual in the usual, to understand the essence of phenomena. A rainbow is not an object located in a specific place in the sky. It is an optical phenomenon that a specific observer sees from a specific point. The center of the rainbow's arc is always located at the point directly opposite the sun, the anti-solar point, on a line passing through the sun and the observer's head. Therefore, if you move, the rainbow moves with you, and you can never reach its end. Two people standing side by side see two different, strictly personal rainbows, formed by different raindrops, although it seems to them that they are seeing the same one. A rainbow is a personal, intimate experience of light, water, and the geometry of space. The geometry of nature often strives for maximum efficiency and economy. Honeycombs are shaped like perfect hexagons, not by chance or for aesthetic reasons. This shape allows for the most compact filling of space, using the minimum amount of costly wax to build the cell walls. It has long been mathematically proven that of all the shapes that can tile a plane without gaps, triangles, squares, hexagons, the regular hexagon has the smallest perimeter for a given area. Bees, without knowing higher mathematics, have instinctively found the most optimal engineering solution over millions of years of evolution, which allows them to save precious resources and energy. Earth's resources are not infinite, but some of them are truly ancient and non-renewable. Helium, which we use to fill balloons and in scientific instruments, is a unique resource. Almost all helium on Earth was formed as a result of the slow alpha decay of uranium and thorium in the Earth's crust over billions of years. Accumulating over geological epochs, it becomes trapped underground with natural gas, from where it is extracted. Being the second lightest element, any helium released into the atmosphere quickly escapes into space and is lost to the planet forever. Each portion of helium is a particle of the planet's ancient radioactive breath, which we release into eternity. The planet's breath can also be literally fiery. In different parts of the world, there are places where coal seams lying not far beneath the ground have been burning for hundreds and even thousands of years. Mount Wingan in Australia, known to local Aboriginal people as Burning Mountain, is an underground coal fire that scientists estimate has been burning for at least 6,000 years. The fire slowly, at a rate of about 1 meter per year, moves along the coal seam at a depth of about 30 meters. Similar eternal fires exist in other countries, for example, the Door to Hell in Turkmenistan or the Smoking Hills in Canada. These are quiet, hidden cataclysms, reminders of the combustible treasures and unquenchable fire hidden in the Earth's depths. The depths hold not only fire, but also traces of water where it seemingly never existed. The vast and lifeless Sahara Desert was not always this way. About 6,000 years ago, during a period known as the African Humid Period, it was a green, flourishing land with deep rivers, huge lakes, and savannas where giraffes, elephants, and hippos grazed. This period was caused by slight changes in the Earth's orbit, Milankovitch cycles, which shifted the African monsoon belt far to the north. Ancient rock paintings found in the heart of the modern desert depict hunting scenes, herds of animals, and even people swimming in lakes, ghostly memories of a green Sahara captured in stone. Memories of the distant past can be encrypted not only in stone, but also in our own genes. Humans, like many other mammals, have a gene responsible for producing the enzyme for vitamin C synthesis. But in our distant primate ancestors, about 60 million years ago, a mutation occurred that broke this gene, and we lost the ability to synthesize this vital vitamin on our own. Therefore, unlike most animals, we must obtain it from food. This genetic breakdown, which has become an invisible scar in our genome, is a direct legacy of the times when our ancestors lived in tropical forests. Their diet was rich in fruits, and their own synthesis of vitamin C was simply not needed. Necessity and isolation are the main drivers of evolution. On the island of Socotra in the Indian Ocean, which separated from Africa millions of years ago, some of the strangest and most alien plants on Earth have evolved. The dragon's blood tree, Dracaena cinnabari, has the shape of a giant mushroom or umbrella and secretes a red resin that resembles blood. The cucumber tree is a thick, swollen, bottle-shaped trunk with a small tuft of branches at the top. More than a third of Socotra's plant species are found nowhere else in the world. These and many other endemic species are the result of long evolution in the unique conditions of an arid climate and isolation, a living museum of bizarre and amazing life forms. The world beneath our feet is full of such invisible islands of evolution. Sky Islands is a beautiful name for isolated mountain ranges that rise above the surrounding lowland deserts or plains, like islands in an ocean. The climate and ecosystems on the humid and cool peaks of these mountains differ dramatically from the dry and hot landscape at their base. The animals and plants inhabiting these peaks cannot cross the hostile lowlands and find themselves completely isolated from their relatives on other sky islands. This isolation leads to the rapid formation of unique, endemic species. Each such mountain is a separate vertical arc of evolution. Evolution sometimes reaches a dead end and leads to extinction, and sometimes it comes full circle and surprises scientists. The Lazarus effect is a term paleontologists use to describe the unexpected reappearance in the fossil record of a taxon, a species, genus, or family that was thought to be long extinct. This means that the species did not actually go extinct, but simply that its remains were not preserved in geological deposits for millions of years for some reason, or it was so rare that it was not found. One of the most famous resurrected creatures is the coelacanth, a lobe-finned fish that was considered extinct, along with the dinosaurs 66 million years ago, until a live one was caught off the coast of Africa in 1938. Life finds the most incredible and almost fantastical ways to survive in extreme conditions. Tardigrades, or water bears, are microscopic invertebrates that are the absolute champions of survival. They are capable of entering a state of cryptobiosis, or anhydrobiosis, almost completely drying out and slowing their metabolism to an imperceptible level. In this death-like state, they can withstand extreme temperatures from near absolute zero to plus 150 degrees, immense pressure thousands of times greater than atmospheric pressure, and lethal doses of radiation. They have even been sent into outer space, where they were exposed to a vacuum and cosmic radiation, and many of them survived. These tiny creatures prove that fragility and invulnerability can exist simultaneously. The vulnerability of our entire planet becomes apparent when viewed from a sufficient distance. The overview effect is a profound cognitive and emotional shift experienced by many astronauts when they see Earth from space for the first time. Observing our planet as a fragile, shining blue and white orb floating in the boundless blackness and void, they often begin to perceive national borders and political conflicts as petty and artificial, and the need to protect our shared home as an obvious and immutable truth. It is a powerful, transformative realization of the unity, fragility, and preciousness of our world that comes only with a cosmic perspective. From an even greater distance, from the edge of the solar system, this fragility becomes even more poignant. In 1990, as the Voyager 1 spacecraft was leaving our system, it turned back on command from Earth to take one last picture of its home. From a distance of 6 billion kilometers, Earth appeared as a tiny pale blue dot, lost in a scattered sunbeam. This photograph, at the suggestion of astronomer Carl Sagan, became a powerful symbol of our place in the universe. All our wars, our joys, the entire history of humanity has unfolded on this barely visible speck of dust. This image is the most powerful reminder of how important it is to be kinder to one another and to cherish the only home we have ever known. This home is not just a rock flying through space. It is enveloped in the thinnest, most precious veil, the atmosphere. If the Earth were the size of an ordinary apple, the entire atmosphere in which we live, breathe, and fly would be no thicker than its skin. It is within this thin, almost imperceptible layer that all the air, all the weather, all the clouds, and all life as we know it is contained. This incredibly fragile gaseous shell is the only boundary between a warm, humid living world and the cold, silent, deadly vacuum of space. And its integrity is the most precious thing we have. Even the mysterious sounds of the aurora, if they truly exist, are born in this thin layer between worlds. Although the aurora physically occurs too high in the rarefied atmosphere to produce audible sound, many observers in polar latitudes have for centuries reported a quiet hissing, crackling, or rustling during particularly bright auroral displays. Modern research suggests that this may not be a direct sound, but an electrostatic discharge near the Earth's surface, caused by the powerful geomagnetic disturbances that also create the aurora. It is a disputed, almost mystical sound, like a whisper from the very boundary between Earth and space, as faint and mysterious as the dance of the celestial lights itself. This boundary between light and darkness on our planet is constantly and relentlessly moving. The Terminator line, which separates the day and night sides of Earth, is not a sharp line but a smooth, blurred zone of twilight where light and shadow flow into one another. It rushes across the surface at the planet's rotational speed, about 1670 kilometers per hour at the equator, but as it approaches the poles, its speed drops to zero. If you were to stand at the very pole during the polar day or night, you could simply walk slowly along with it, remaining in a perpetual sunset or sunrise. This great wave of shadow, silently washing over the planet every 24 hours, is the slowest and fastest sunset at the same time, depending only on where you stand. Sometimes, in the quiet hours of twilight, the planet casts a shadow upon itself, and this shadow can be seen with the naked eye. Earth's shadow is a dark bluish-purple band that appears above the horizon in the part of the sky opposite the setting or rising sun. It is the shadow of our planet cast upon its own atmosphere. Above this dark band, a pink or orange arc called the belt of Venus is often visible. This is sunlight scattered in the upper atmosphere that has not yet plunged into the shadow. To observe Earth's shadow is to see our own planet block the sun, covering the sky with its vast, invisible yet real curved silhouette. The silhouettes of trees in a winter forest hold a different secret, the secret of deep silence. Freshly fallen fluffy snow is one of nature's best sound-absorbing materials. Its porous structure, consisting of many complex ice crystals and countless air pockets between them, effectively dampens sound waves, preventing them from reflecting and propagating. That is why after a heavy snowfall, the world seems muffled, silent, as if wrapped in a thick, soft blanket. This winter silence is not just the absence of sound, but its active absorption, a physical property that we intuitively perceive as deep tranquility, purity, and peace, as if nature itself is holding its breath. Peace can also be found in the poetic idea of the memory of water, but not in a mystical sense, but in a scientific one. Every water molecule in the ocean holds in its isotopic composition, the ratio of heavy and light isotopes of hydrogen and oxygen, the memory of its long journey. From this composition, scientists can determine where this water evaporated, in which cloud it traveled, as what kind of snowflake it fell on a glacier thousands of years ago, and how long it remained in the ice. Water remembers its path through the great planetary cycle, connecting the past and the present, glaciers and deserts, rivers and clouds. It is an eternal wanderer and a silent keeper of stories that can only be read in the language of science, but felt with the heart as the connection of everything to everything. The heart of everything that exists, including ourselves, was forged in the incredible heat of dying stars. Almost all chemical elements heavier than hydrogen and helium, which make up our planet and our bodies, the carbon in our cells, the oxygen we breathe, the iron in our blood, were created in the process of stellar nucleosynthesis. They were born in the thermonuclear furnace of massive stars, which at the end of their short but brilliant lives exploded as supernovae, scattering these precious newborn elements throughout the galaxy. From this stellar ash, new stars and planets, including our own, eventually formed. We are made of stardust. Every cell in our body is an echo of a distant stellar explosion, a particle of the cosmos that has gained consciousness and the ability to look back at the stars. This consciousness is trying to solve other ancient mysteries, such as the faint young sun paradox. Modern models of stellar evolution show that 4 billion years ago, when life was already emerging on Earth, the sun shone about 30% more faintly than it does now. With such a level of radiation, the young Earth should have been a completely frozen ice ball. However, geological evidence irrefutably indicates that liquid oceans existed on it. It is likely that the atmosphere at that time contained much more greenhouse gases, such as carbon dioxide and methane, which warmed the planet, creating a powerful blanket. From the very beginning, the Earth knew how to create its own protection so as not to freeze in its cosmic cradle, maintaining a fragile balance. And even in dying, stars can give birth to incredible ephemeral beauty. When a star like our sun exhausts its hydrogen fuel in its core, it swells into a red giant and then sheds its outer layers, forming an expanding, glowing shell of gas and dust called a planetary nebula. At the center remains a hot, dense white dwarf, the former core of the star, whose powerful ultraviolet radiation causes this nebula to glow brightly in various colors. These objects, some of the most beautiful in space, have no relation to planets. Their name is merely a historical mistake by astronomers of the past. Our Earth, someday, in billions of years, will also be swallowed by the dying sun and become part of such cosmic dust, from which perhaps something new will be born. Thus we conclude our quiet journey through the mysteries of the Earth, from the whisper of the rain to the silence of space. We have seen that our planet is not just a stage for life, but a living, breathing organism, full of wonders and enigmas. Every stone, every drop of water, every breath of air holds a history billions of years long. And in this grand, slow symphony, we are but a fleeting, yet self-aware note. If you enjoy these quiet journeys, I invite you to like, subscribe, or share a thought below. It helps others find their way here, one sleepy soul at a time. And now, just breathe. Let your eyes grow heavy and let the quiet mysteries of the Earth lull your thoughts. Good night.